Alrighty guys, so today's video we are going to be making a Chivalry 2 weapon tier list, and all of these weapons, they're going to be placed based on my own experiences and how well I think they perform in a 1v1 scenario. I'm going to try to be as objective as possible on where I'm placing all of these things. Getting right into it, we've already placed a bunch of these things down here in the unknown section because I don't really think they apply as much to 1v1s. You know, not everybody's throwing their secondaries at people, and not everybody's using spike traps, so these are all just kind of down here so we can focus on the main weapons that people use. So starting off our tier list, we're gonna have to place all of the ranged weapons, and this includes crossbow, the heavy crossbow. They're all gonna have to go down here in the trash tier. I mean, these are really good weapons meant for team objective, but in a 1v1 scenario, they're just not very good. So now we're going to start placing our one-handed weapons. Obviously, the shovel is going to be in the S tier. It's absolutely insane. No, but all jokes aside, we're going to have to put it in the C tier. I don't think the average player is really that good with a shovel, so that's why I'm going to be putting it there. Next up, we got the one-handed axe. This thing is actually amazing. It does a lot of damage. I'm surprised with how well I can do with this weapon. But we're going to put it down here in the A tier because I don't really think it deserves to be in the S tier. Next up, we got the Warhammer. Now, this weapon, insane damage, destroys knights. It just plows through armor. I actually do think this weapon belongs in the S tier. Next up, we got the Cudgel. I mean, this weapon's fast, it's fun, and the reality is it sucks. So it's going to have to go in the D tier for me. Next up, we got the Morningstar. This weapon, this weapon is like the king of animation abuse. It's so hard to read, and it's hard to place it. I'm gonna have to put it in the A tier. It's good. I don't think it's S tier worthy though. Next up, we got the Sledgehammer. Sledgehammer, same thing. This thing is really good. It's fast. I love using it. I honestly think this weapon and pickaxe, like they're almost toe-to-toe with each other. But again, I don't think against other weapons they're really that great. So they're gonna have to go down here in the B tier. Next up, we got the Dagger. Dagger's good, but again, it doesn't do that much damage. I mean, the special is really good. If you hit people from behind, it can be really good, but it's got to go down here in the C tier. It's just very mid. And next up, we got the short sword. I love this thing. This thing's so fun. It's easily one of the fastest swords in the game, if not the fastest, but it does no damage, so it's gonna have to go down here in the C tier. Next up, guys, we got the sword. Now, this one's kind of tricky. I think the sword is really good for the stamina negation. I think it just depends on who's using it, but I'm actually going to place it here in the S tier. I do think it's really good. Next up, we got the mace. I do think the mace is actually S tier as well. This has been like the clutch weapon for me when I get my weapon knocked out of my hand. I think it's really good. It's fast, does a lot of damage, and I just think it belongs up here at the top. Next up, we got the heavy cavalry sword. Now, this weapon is a lot like the great sword, where if you do riposte overheads, you can completely destroy people's stamina. I'm not really that good with it. I do think it's a very good weapon, so I'm gonna have to place it down here in the amazing tier. It's a good weapon. Next up, we got the falchion. Now, I easily would place this in the S tier. It's hard to read sometimes, depending on which skin you're using, but we're gonna be putting this in the A tier. Moving on, guys, we got the rapier. Now, this weapon is a little bit difficult to place because in my own experience, I think it's a really good weapon, but I just don't think it does enough damage to even be A tier. Like, I actually honestly think it belongs in B tier. It's a good weapon, it's fast, it's fun, it's annoying, but it does no damage. Next up, we got the guitars. Now, doing the Easter egg is fun, getting the crab guitars is really cool, but I feel like for the average person, this weapon is just not very good. You can't interrupt your opponent out of their attacks. You have to be very careful about your timings, and it takes a really good person with these to make these shine, and I'm not one of them. So we're going to be putting it down here in the D tier. So now we're going to begin placing all of our two-handed weapons. Starting off, we got the new weapon that just came out. This thing's trash. It's fun to use. The pencil, it's so slow, man. Unless I wanted to knock somebody off a horse, I would never use this weapon. So it's going to have to go in the F tier for me. Now we got the quarterstaff. This weapon's easily going to be a A or a B tier. I'm just going to throw it in the B tier because I don't think it's really that good. I mean, it has hard animations that are difficult to read sometimes, but Yeah. Next up, we got the War Club. Again, this is one of the most annoying weapons in the game. I'm tempted to put it here in the A tier just because it's so fast. I think its lack of damage isn't really that great, but in a 1v1 situation, I think it's easily A tier. Next up, we got the Poleaxe. This weapon is incredibly underrated. It has really good stamina negation. It has an incredible special. It has a really tiny range, the space of which your attacks hit. It's still going to go in the S tier. I know there's a lot of other people who are fantastic with it. I'm just not one of them. Next up, we got the Spears. One-handed spear is my main weapon, and it has to go S tier. I just think that with the correct mix-ups and with really good footwork, you're literally untouchable with this thing. And I think that's why a lot of people hate the two-handed spear on the footman class. I don't really use that weapon that much. I like the special with the one-handed spear, but this, without a doubt, earns a spot up here at the top. Next up, we got the War Axe. I think this belongs in the A tier. I don't really have a lot to say about it. It's good, but I think the Battle Axe is just better than it. So next up, I'm going to place the Battle Axe S tier, without a doubt. I mean, you can drain people's stamina with this so good. There's a lot of people from the Omen clan that are really good with this weapon. I mean, I'm pretty good with it. I'm definitely not the best with it, but I think it deserves to be up here at the top. Next up, we got the Pole Hammer. I think Pole Hammer, just like with the Poleaxe, deserves to be up here. I've been using it a lot recently. I find a lot of success using it. It's just a good weapon. It has an insane special where it doesn't look like it's going to hit you, and then it just does. So it can be hard to read that sometimes, for sure. Next up, we got the Halberd. I mean, Halberd, I feel it's weird putting all these weapons up here in the S tier. I think Halberd's good, but I don't think it's S tier worthy. Team Objective, without a doubt, it belongs up there at the top. I'm going to have to put it in A tier, maybe even B tier. The main thing about it, I think it has a really good stab, and that's probably why I would put it up here in A, but we're going to leave it down here in the B tier. Next up, we got the Glaive. Now, the Glaive, I love this weapon. It's fast, it's quick, I can get a lot of kills on people with this thing, but the problem with it is that it does no damage, right? It's weak. Even with heavies, I feel like it's weak. It's gonna have to go in the B tier with the Halberd. I mean, it's a good weapon. I just don't think it's worthy of being an A or S. Next up, we got the two-handed hammer. There are some people who are absolutely nuts with this thing. I'm not one of them. I think it's really good, and maybe for some people it would belong in the S tier, but I think for most people this probably sits in the A or the B tier. I'm not really sure where to place that one. I know a lot of people are just insane with it. I'm just not one of them. Next up, we got the Dane X. Undoubtedly S tier. Team Objective, 1v1. This thing is stupid. I mean, throwing it, stupid damage. It's just so fast, right? You can abuse the overhead animation. You can do a feints with it. That goes with every weapon, but for whatever reason, this weapon is just stupid. Easily deserves S tier. Next up, guys, we got the Highland Sword. This weapon's a lot of fun to use in Team Objective. I don't really have a lot to say about it. I don't really think it's an S tier weapon in Duels. I think it's more of like an A or B tier. I don't think the average person really does that great with this weapon, just because of how slow it is. So I'm going to have to put it down here in the B tier with the Glaive and the Halberd. Next up, we got the Execution Axe. Pretty much the same story. Really good against knights. Really fun to use drags with this thing, but it's got to probably go down in A or B tier. In Team Objective, it's probably one of my favorite weapons. I think in Team Objective it's an S tier, but we're going to put it down here in the A tier. Next up, we got the Greatsword. Greatsword, undoubtedly in the S tier. Everybody knows this thing is amazing. It's incredibly good in 1v1. It's incredibly good in the Team Objective. It's such a well-rounded two-handed weapon. And you can break your opponent's stamina, knock their weapon out of their hand with this thing so often. Next up, we got the Maul. I like the Maul. I don't think it's as... I think it's got to go in the B tier for me. I'm not really good at abusing it, but there are some people in 1v1s that are so good with this thing. And, yeah, it's just going to go in the B tier. Next up, we got the Heavy Mace. The stamina negation, and just the fact that it does so much damage to knights. You can pretty much two-shot knights with this thing. It's got to go with S tier. Next up, we got the Longsword. Everybody knows this is probably the most well-rounded weapon in the game. It's useful for all situations, any scenario you could possibly imagine. So we're going to have to put that in the S tier. And finally, guys, we got the Messer, and same thing. S tier. This thing is stupid. It's got such good animations that you can abuse. It's really good at stabbing. It's a nice little hybrid between Longsword and Greatsword. That's pretty much what Messer is. But yeah, it's gotta go up there at the top. Alrighty guys, so that is going to wrap up the rest of this video. I hope you enjoyed my Chivalry 2 2024 tier list for dueling. Let me know what you guys think. I mean, I know this list is kind of odd. I have so many weapons up here in the S tier that I'd imagine a lot of you probably don't agree with the way that I've listed these weapons. But please, let me know what you think. Leave a like, comment, subscribe for more content. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the next one.